What do monsters fear? That's a question I've always enjoyed seeing tackled in stories, whether it's the typical garlic and cross affair with vampires, or something like the fairly in-depth look at Frankenstein's monster's mind in the original book. It's just fun to turn that fear on its head, to explore a more human side to these creatures in their moments of weakness and vulnerability. And the Kizumonogatari movies easily have my favorite moment of fear from a monster, specifically in their opening moments. Here, Araragi, the protagonist of the story, experiences his first moments after being transformed into a vampire, and everything about the scene is built around getting us into his mind. First, there's the setting Araragi walks through, a large mall which has become this strange liminal space with an air of familiarity to it, and yet something's off. It's too empty. There's the feeling that somehow this space has changed or is in the process of changing. Considering that Araragi is only just taking his first steps as a vampire, this is incredibly fitting, and reflects his character well. In particular, there's this seemingly endless spiral staircase going up into darkness. As he trudges up the steps, each movement laborious, it seems like there's no end in sight. Of course, this wouldn't be a literal interpretation of the staircase though. There's no way the mall's steps would go on and on forever like this. Instead, it serves once again to get us into his mind, to help us understand how something as simple as climbing up some steps has become a Herculean task, and even then, it seems like he's moving toward an unknown. Part of what makes this space feel so unnatural are the lights. They are consistently just a bit too bright, piercing through the rest of the image, and sometimes the artists even add in a lens flare to the screen to really sell how much it's overtaking the picture. At times, they drown out Araragi, leaving him overexposed as they sheen off metal surfaces. At other points, there are far more than there would ever be in reality, like an army of them all lined up. When the lights are focused on, a dull ringing sound plays, only getting louder as they grow brighter. Constantly, we see the light reflecting off Araragi's eyes. They are what he sees, what he focuses on, and he can't seem to pull himself away from them, even though getting closer to them makes him weak. However, as he climbs up the steps, the light eventually becomes clear, shining bright, embodying that typical idea of a light at the end of the tunnel. Hope. But then it comes into focus. What once seemed like an explosion of white is just a tiny sliver of sunlight through a crack in the door. That's what was so powerful to him. After finally bringing himself to open the door, the light flares too, drowning the screen in white. But then we see, it's overcast. There's barely any light to speak of. This whole opening segment frames the light in an eerie way. From the sound to the brightness, it has this oppressive quality. It steals so much focus from the scene, almost like it's the monster in a horror movie, instead of the vampire himself. There's also this sense that Araragi isn't your typical vampire, since, despite it hurting him, he's desperately fighting to get outside to the light. So this is something he still wants, even if it's hurting him. This way it embodies his inability to quite believe what has happened to him, or to accept that his life has fundamentally changed. Of course, though, the way the light is figured doesn't do that all on its own. Now, we've got the character-focused framing and animation to thank for that. As Araragi walks through the mall, the angles and focus of these shots constantly change. On top of that, one moment Araragi will be walking calmly, appearing casual, and the next he'll be running, eyes darting around like he expects someone to be following him. The rapid pace of the scene, the way he moves and looks around, the angles, and all of it. It combines together to create one of the most accurate depictions of panic and paranoia I've ever seen in animation, and wordlessly tells us all that we need to know about Araragi's feelings. But even though I've spent a lot of time talking about the mall, it's not the only space that is given proper emphasis. Outside is similar, with this leafless tree now covered in crows. Crows are all around it too on the ground, the blackness blotting out the building's bright exterior. The crows stare at him with their blank eyes, and he stares back at them, uncomfortable, confused, shocked. Again, this is all part of setting the mood. A big change has taken place, and these creatures are here to witness it. Whatever happened to him was a big enough event that even nature itself is bending around it. Finally, though, the sun peeks through the clouds, impossibly bright, and in an instant, everything changes. Araragi bursts into flames, the directing shifts to chaotic and frenetic, the birds scatter. He takes on a sketchy appearance, barely holding his form within the fire. As he screams, the birds fly, and he falls, tumbling through the air, still on fire, until he lands on the ground and stares up at the sky, at the sun, and reaches toward it, like it's something he still wants, that he still needs, but that it will smite him all the same. I absolutely adore this sequence and the way the sun is handled here. To me, the sun feels like the giant city-destroying monster in a Godzilla movie, this incredibly oppressive force that threatens Araragi's very existence, which is exactly what it is, but still, it's such a convincing, humanizing way to introduce us to the movie's protagonist, and to show us how genuinely terrifying it would be to suddenly become a vampire. On top of that, the movie itself hasn't revealed that he is one, so there's a mysterious quality to the whole thing. What's going on? Why is the light like this? Why is he panicked? And the moment it all clicks into place as he's set on fire, it's awesome. And this is all beyond the fact that I love the presentation of this entire flame sequence. The way the animation looks is simply impressive to me. From its depiction of paranoia to the framing of light and the sun to the character animation, all of it displays an absolutely masterful understanding of how to wordlessly communicate emotion in a visual medium. And it's easily one of my favorite scenes in any movie.